One of the issues that I think comes up very frequently, especially among academics, but not just among academics, unfortunately, is that it's very interesting to look at all of these different traditions and the truths that have a certain convergence, if you like, because two things can result. Unfortunately, as the so-called religious education in colleges in this country goes, by pointing out the truths in all of these religions and their convergence, which was something that became very clear within my father's writings, there ends up a certain indifference. There's no commitment made to anything. And just because you know that Hinduism says this and somebody else says that doesn't involve you in any clear-cut condition. One of the things my father used to speak of is that he was not interested in a spiritual esperanza, where you take a little bit of this and a little bit of that and mix it together. He felt it was very important to actually live within a sacred form. I think Schuon somewhere points out that in Hinduism there are four great blessings. One is to be born a human being, a man, which is central to all creation. One is to be born within that tradition, within any specific traditional form. The third one is to be called to a life of prayer. And the fourth one is to be called to use the prayer of the name. And I think this is something my father would have fully agreed with. He would have not perhaps expressed it in quite that way, but while he was, if you like, an expert at showing that St. Thomas Aquinas and Sankaracharya were saying the same thing time and again, at the same time, he often stressed the fact that you cannot follow a Hindu path and a Christian path at the same time. You can only walk on one path at a time, even though the paths may converge at the end. And so the terrible importance of actually participating within the rites of a given tradition, increasingly difficult certainly in our days, was something that he himself stressed, which is why, of course, he planned at the end of his life to take sannyas, which was basically to become a monk, or that is to say, an Orthodox Hindu monk. Now, if I use the word Orthodox, I'm using it in a very specific sense. The term, at least in Christianity, that is in Catholicism, is defined as right doctrine and true belief. Unfortunately, the powers that be have distorted its meaning and turned it into something that is kind of rigid and fundamentalist and so forth. That is not what I'm trying to convey when I say that he felt it was very important for someone to live clearly within an Orthodox tradition and to partake of the rites. I mentioned earlier that when the earth grows old, again, using an analogy rather than a literal statement, God in His mercy provides us with forms of renewal. But we need to use those forms of renewal, not just to say, aren't they very pretty and it's nice, and forget about it, which so often happens, and to say, well, if it's said here and also said elsewhere, then that's interesting too, but you don't have to do anything about it. And so I think sometimes my father is misunderstood on this point. He certainly felt it was important to follow and to participate actively, because that is the only way that the soul itself can be transformed, as it were. And if you're not going to transform your soul, then you're just, whistling Dixie, as the expression goes. You may whistle it very nice, but it doesn't mean anything.